Let's face it, when you hear the words Ford muscle cars and 1970s in the same sentence, your brain instantly flashes with raw power, thunderous V8 engines, and that rebellious American spirit that couldn't be tamed. But let me tell you something most people don't realize. Not all Ford muscle cars from the 70s were built equal. Some were legends that roared through the streets like gods of metal and gasoline, while others were embarrassing missteps, clunky relics that never should have left the factory floor. And yet, here's where the brainwashing begins. You've been lied to. The muscle car world has been romanticized, polished, and sugar-coated by nostalgia and shiny magazine covers. You're told that everything from that era was golden, that every Mustang, Torino, or Fairlane was a masterpiece. But the truth? Some of them were absolute disasters. Mechanical nightmares, style flops, performance duds. Cars that carried the muscle car badge but couldn't back it up with muscle under the hood. It's easy to get swept up in the fantasy. The decals, the stripes, the growl of an engine. It's designed to manipulate your senses. But horsepower doesn't lie. And when the numbers don't match the hype, when the car looks tough but drives like a loaf of bread, that's when the illusion shatters. And that's what we're doing in this video. We're shattering illusions because you deserve to know the truth. Whether you're a die-hard Ford enthusiast or just a curious gearhead, you're about to be mentally reprogrammed. We're going to dig deep, not just into performance specs and sales figures, but into the cultural mistakes and engineering blunders that created some of the worst Ford muscle cars of the 1970s. And just when you think you've lost hope, we'll rise back up with the best of the best. The machines that defied the odds, broke the rules, and earned their place in history. So get ready to question everything you thought you knew. The truth isn't always pretty, but it's loud, fast, and brutally honest. Let's dive in. The 7 worst Ford muscle cars of the 1970s. 1974 Ford Mustang Duo. Let's be honest, this wasn't a Mustang, it was a costume. Ford slapped the Mustang badge on a Pinto-based chassis and called it Evolution. But don't be fooled. The Mustang II was a downgrade in every possible way. Less power, less presence, and absolutely no soul. A 4-cylinder engine in a muscle car? That's not compromise, it's sacrilege. Ford tried to sell it as fuel efficient, but all they delivered was a hollow shell that had the name, but none of the fury. It didn't roar, it whimpered. 2. 1971 Ford Maverick Grabber. Now this is what happens when marketing gets ahead of engineering. The Maverick Grabber looked the part with its flashy graphics and aggressive styling, but under the hood? Mediocrity. It topped out at around 210 horsepower at best, and that's being generous. People bought it thinking they were getting a Mustang alternative, but what they really got was a dressed-up economy car. It was all bark and no bite, and muscle cars are supposed to bite hard. 3. 1975 Ford Torino. By 1975, the Torino had lost its way. The original Torino Cobra was a menace on the streets, but what happened in the mid-70s was a bloated, sluggish machine struggling under federal regulations and poor engineering choices. It was heavy, underpowered, and looked more like a barge than a muscle car. It became the symbol of what went wrong with American performance, trying to keep the muscle car image alive without delivering any of the actual muscle. 4. 1978 Ford Fairmont Futura V8 version. Ford tried to slip this one under the radar. The Fairmont Futura with a V8 might seem like a hidden gem, but let's not kid ourselves. It wasn't a real muscle car. Sure, it had a 302 cubic inch V8, but it was strangled by emissions regulations and choked by low compression. You don't get points for just having a V8. It has to perform. And this car? It was sluggish, uninspired, and forgettable. It tried to pose as performance, but it couldn't even keep up with a decade-old Mustang. 5. 1976 Ford Elite. This car was a masterclass in bad direction. The Elite was built to compete with personal luxury cars like the Monte Carlo, but Ford dressed it up like a muscle car. And it failed. Miserably. It was ridiculously heavy, painfully slow, and had zero street presence. The only thing elite about this car was how elite it was at disappointing every enthusiast who laid eyes on it expecting muscle and got marshmallow softness instead. 6. 1973 Ford Mustang Mach 1 base model. The 73 Mustang Mach 1 sounds like it should be incredible, but that's only if you don't look under the hood. The base model came with a 302 V8 that barely pushed 140 horsepower. That's laughable. All the stripes and scoops in the world couldn't cover up the fact that this car was neutered by the time it rolled out of the factory. It had muscle car looks, but the soul had already been crushed by insurance rates and government mandates. 7. 1979 Ford Mustang Fox Body launch year. Here's a controversial pick, but the first Fox Body Mustang of '79 was not the legend people remember. It was the awkward first step in a new era. It was too soft, too quiet, and too disconnected from the muscle cars that came before. It had a weak V8, underwhelming performance, and a design that felt confused. The Fox Body became a hero later, but in 1979, it was a stumble, not a sprint. People bought it hoping for rebirth and got a cold, calculated prototype instead. The 6 best Ford muscle cars of the 1970s. 1. 1970 Ford Mustang Boss 429. This is it, the crown jewel. The Boss 429 wasn't just a muscle car, it was a monster built to dominate NASCAR. It came with a massive 429 cubic inch V8 engine stuffed into the Mustang's frame by hand, thanks to Carcraft. It produced 375 horsepower on paper, but insiders know it was way more, closer to 500. It was rare, raw, and ridiculously powerful. It's the definition of Ford muscle, unapologetic, aggressive, and unforgettable. 2. 1971 Ford Torino Cobra. Before the Torino went soft, it went hard. The 71 Cobra was the last true performance version of the Torino. Available with the fearsome 429 Cobra jet engine, it delivered real muscle and menacing looks. It had drag strip DNA and street presence that turned heads and snapped necks. It wasn't trying to be luxurious, it was trying to crush everything in its lane. And it often did. 3. 1970 Ford Mustang Mach 1 428 Super Cobra Jet. This car is pure American muscle. With the 428 Super Cobra Jet under the hood, this Mach 1 delivered terrifying torque and brutal acceleration. It was designed to win street races, period. No frills, no fluff, just speed. This was Ford at its most primal. Every time the engine growled, it reminded you that it wasn't built for comfort. It was built for dominance. 4. 1970 Ford Torino GT 429 Super Cobra Jet. The Torino GT wasn't just an alternative to the Mustang, it was a straight-up street killer when optioned right. The 429 SCJ version was lightning in a bottle. With functional ram air, a competition suspension, and aggressive gearing, it could eat quarter miles for breakfast. This was Ford's full-size flex, a muscle car for those who wanted raw force in a bigger body. And it delivered. 5. 1972 Ford Gran Torino Sport with 351 Cobra Jet. Even in the face of rising regulations, Ford squeezed out some last drops of magic with the 72 Gran Torino Sport. When equipped with the 351 Cobra Jet, it still packed solid power and handled better than expected for its size. It wasn't just about muscle. It had style, attitude, and surprising agility. It proved that even as the muscle era faded, Ford could still throw punches. 6. 1970 Mercury Cyclone Spoiler 429 SCJ. Yes, it's technically Mercury, but it was under the Ford umbrella, and it deserves a place here. The Cyclone spoiler was an aggressive, underrated beast. With the same 429 Super Cobra jet engine, it rivaled the Boss cars in performance and exclusivity. It was Ford's secret weapon, sleek, brutal, and built for one thing: speed. While others saw Mercury as tame, this car exploded that myth in a cloud of smoke and tire marks. Now you know the truth. Ford's 1970s lineup wasn't a golden age. It was a battlefield. Some cars rose above the chaos and became legends. Others, they were victims of the times, poor decisions, and lost vision. But the ones that got it right? They weren't just cars. They were statements, machines that grabbed history by the throat and refused to be forgotten. Which side are you on?